The morning sun filters through the marble columns of your family's courtyard in Rome, 57 BCE, casting dappled shadows on the clay dolls you clutch as a 10-year-old girl. The air carries the scent of olive oil and fresh bread, your mother humming softly as she weaves nearby, her loom clicking rhythmically. Your father's voice drifts from the atrium, negotiating with clients, the hum of a typical day in your bustling neighborhood. Then, a piercing blast of ceremonial horns shatters the calm, echoing off the stone walls. The pontifex Maximus, Rome's highest priest, has arrived. You peek from behind your mother's robes, heart pounding, as the crowd parts for his retinue, their togas stark white against the dusty street. His eyes, cold and clinical, scan the gathered children, lingering on your face with a precision that freezes time. Livy's Ob Urbe Condita describes such selections as meticulous, seeking girls aged 6 to 10, born of citizen parents, free of defects and from valid marriages, symbols of Roman purity. He raises his staff, voice cutting through the murmurs. This one serves Vesta. Your mother collapses, sobbing, her hands clutching the air where you stood. Your father stands rigid, knowing refusal means death for the family, as Cicero's letters note entire households executed for defiance. You don't understand the tears, only that you've been chosen for an honor whispered in awe, to serve Vesta, goddess of the hearth. But the truth, buried in Rome's sacred laws, is darker. A 30-year sentence of sacred terror awaits. As historian Mary Beard notes, the Vestal's honor was a gilded cage. The selection is immediate, brutal. You're torn from your mother's arms, her cries muffled as priests lead you away, the cobblestones cold under your feet. Families dreaded these visits. As Plutarch recounts in Life of Numa, hiding daughters in distant provinces, or feigning illness to avoid the priest's gaze. Some applied cosmetics to mimic scars, desperate to render girls unfit. But your family had no time to act. The Fasti of Ovid notes the selection's rarity. Only 6 Vestals served at once, making each choice a public spectacle. You're taken to the House of the Vestals, adjacent to the Temple of Vesta in the Roman Forum. Its marble columns and lush gardens, a deceptive beauty, as Aulus Gellius's Attic Nights calls it, a prison adorned with splendor. Your name is erased, replaced with a title tying you to Vesta, severing your past. You cannot inherit, own property, or write unsupervised letters, as Roman law, per digest of Justinian, strict Vestals of personal agency. The emotional toll, as modern trauma studies suggest, is profound. Sudden separation from family at such a young age fractures identity, leaving you clinging to the priest's assurances of divine purpose. Your education begins at once, under the watchful eyes of senior Vestals, their faces stern, their voices sharp. You learn the 3 sacred laws that will govern your life, etched in Rome's religious code, as Livy records, perpetual virginity for 30 years, barring any intimacy. Absolute obedience to the Pontifex Maximus and senior priests, and constant guardianship of the sacred flame, believed to sustain Rome itself. These are not mere duties but chains, each violation carrying punishments so horrific they make crucifixion seem merciful, as Plutarch hints in Tales of Divine Justice. You're told you're sacred, chosen by Vesta, above all women, but the weight of surveillance is immediate. Every step, every word monitored by priests and senior Vestals, as Fasti describes the temple's unyielding oversight. The psychological conditioning is relentless. As Beard observes, Vestals were molded into symbols, not people. You weep at night, begging to go home, but senior Vestals, hardened by years of service, insist resistance is futile. that Vesta demands your sacrifice. Modern psychology likens this to institutional abuse, fostering dependency through fear. A comparison lies in the Oracle of Delphi, where Pythian priestesses, per Herodotus, retained some autonomy, unlike the Vestal's total subjugation. The cultural context of Rome amplifies the stakes. Women's purity was tied to the state's survival, as Livy notes Vesta's flame as Rome's heartbeat. You're no longer a girl, but a vessel of divine will, your body belonging to the empire, as Digest codifies Vestals as state property. The house of the Vestals, with its marble and silk, feels like a tomb, its beauty a lie. You learn to move silently, to lower your eyes, to suppress your grief, as a single misstep could trigger punishments designed not just to correct, but to destroy. A 2nd century BCE account from Fasti Capitolini tells of a Vestal weeping publicly, only to be confined for days as penance. The stage is set for a life of sacred duty and terror, where your worth hinges on perfection, and the flame you guard holds your fate, its flicker a constant reminder of the horrors awaiting any failure. The House of the Vestals, nestled in the heart of the Roman Forum in 57 BCE, is a paradox of beauty and confinement. Its marble columns and fragrant gardens masking the reality of your new life as a 10-year-old Vestal virgin. The air is heavy with incense and the weight of unseen eyes as you learn to navigate this gilded prison under the scrutiny of senior Vestals and priests. Your days are consumed by ritual, tending the sacred flame in the Temple of Vesta, believed to be Rome's lifeline, as Livy's Ab Urbe Condita declares it a symbol of the city's eternal existence. You sweep the temple's stone floors, mix sacred cakes with salt and grain, and memorize prayers in a language older than your father's house. As Pliny the Elder describes in Natural History, noting the archaic rites Vestals preserved. Every action is watched, every mistake noted, as Dionysius of Halicarnassus records the temple's relentless oversight. The flame must never die, its steady glow your responsibility, and you're taught that its extinction is treason, a betrayal of Rome itself. As Fasti by Ovid underscores, you're conditioned to see yourself as sacred, your virginity and obedience tying you to Vesta's divine will, but the cost is your humanity. As historian Mary Beard observes, Vestals were sculpted into symbols, their selves erased. The psychological strain is immediate. Modern studies on institutional trauma suggest such surveillance breeds severe anxiety, and you feel it. Your heart racing each time a priest inspects the flame. You're forbidden to show fear or doubt, your face a mask, as senior Vestals snap at any tremble in your hands. A 2nd century BCE account from Fasti Capitolini tells of a young Vestal confined for a week for faltering during a prayer, her spirit broken to ensure compliance. The 3 sacred laws, perpetual virginity, absolute obedience, and guardianship of the flame, govern your every breath, as Roman law in Digest of Justinian codifies Vestals as state property. Their bodies no longer their own. The threat of punishment looms, none more terrifying than Verberatio, the ritual beating for letting the flame die. If the fire falters, the pontifffects Maximus begins an immediate investigation, interrogating each Vestal in a windowless chamber beneath the temple, as Plutarch's Life of Numa details. You're isolated, deprived of food and sleep, questioned for days until a confession is wrung from you, whether true or not. The punishment unfolds in darkness, in a chamber designed for secrecy. As Livy notes, its rituals were hidden from public view. Stripped naked, you're bound to a wooden frame, a leather gag silencing your cries to preserve your sacred voice, as Pliny the Elder describes the consecrated rods used to avoid visible blood. The beating, administered by the pontifex himself, is precise, causing internal bruising and organ damage without breaking skin, as ancient medical texts, cited in Celsus's De Medicina, confirm deaths from sudden illness, masking Verberatio injuries. The psychological warfare is as brutal as the physical pain. You live in constant dread of the flame's flicker, knowing a gust of wind or a moment's distraction could doom you, as Ovid recounts of Vestal, punished for a flame extinguished by a storm. Modern psychology identifies this as chronic stress, manifesting in tremors and hair loss, as historical accounts describe Vestals aging rapidly under pressure. A parallel lies in the Delphic oracle, where priestesses, per Herodotus, faced intense scrutiny but retained some autonomy, unlike the Vestal's total subjugation. The cultural context of Rome amplifies the horror. Purity was tied to state survival, as Livy notes the flame's failure as a divine warning. The randomness of Verberatio is its true cruelty. A 1st century BCE record from Fasti Capitolini suggests priests sometimes extinguish the flame to target specific Vestals, using religious pretext for political grudges. As Beard observes, the flame was a weapon of control. Recovery is deliberately slow. Temple physicians provide minimal care, prolonging pain, as Plutarch details, reminding you daily your suffering is deserved. You return to duties trembling, more compliant, your spirit fracturing, as modern trauma studies suggest such cycles create learned helplessness. A Vestal in 73 BCE, recorded in Asconius's commentaries, survived Verberatio, but developed a stammer, her body bearing the stress long after. The temple's beauty, its marble and silk, mocks your fear, as every glance from a priest or flicker of the flame could signal another round of torment. A comparison to Spartan military discipline, per Xenophon's Constitution of the Lacedaemonians, shows a less ritualized cruelty, where punishment was public, not cloaked in divine secrecy. You learn to move with mechanical precision, your childhood games a distant memory, replaced by a vigilance that consumes you. The stage is set for even darker punishments, where the Vestal's sacred status becomes a twisted justification for horrors that defy comprehension, their truths buried in Rome's sacred texts, waiting to unsettle us. The Temple of Vesta's sacred flame flickers in its bronze brazier, casting shadows across the marble walls of the Roman Forum in 57 BCE. A constant reminder of your precarious existence as a 10-year-old Vestal virgin. At this age, you've already learned to dread the flame's every waver, your life bound to its eternal burn, as Livy's Ab Urbe Condita declares it the heartbeat of Rome's divine favor. The House of the Vestals, with its polished columns and fragrant gardens, is no sanctuary, but a prison, where every glance from a senior Vestal or priest weighs your worth. You move with practiced silence, your bound feet aching under heavy robes, reciting prayers under the watchful eyes of the pontifex Maximus, as Dionysius of Halicarnassus describes in Roman antiquities the unyielding scrutiny of the temple's overseers. The 3 sacred laws, perpetual virginity, absolute obedience, and guardianship of the flame, are your chains, and any violation invites horrors beyond imagination. The most terrifying is the punishment for incestum, the charge of violating your vow of chastity, reserved for the gravest betrayal of Vesta's sanctity. In 216 BCE, the case of Opimia and Floronia, recorded by Livy, reveals the chilling reality of this fate. Accused of breaking their vows based on mere gossip and political rivalries, they faced a trial that was no trial at all, conducted in secrecy by the College of Pontiffs. As Roman antiquities confirms, no defense was permitted. You imagine yourself in their place, standing before stern priests, your voice silenced, accusations from anonymous sources sealing your doom. The verdict was not execution, but something far worse, living burial, a ritual so horrific it was cloaked in poetic language, return to the earth from which all life springs. The punishment begins at dawn, with a procession through the Roman Forum, as Livy describes. The condemned Vestal, dressed in a white bridal gown, flowers woven into her veil, resembling a bride but bound for death. You picture the crowd parting, their whispers a mix of awe and fear, unaware of the truth behind the spectacle. Her mouth is sealed with wax to prevent cries, as Plutarch notes in Life of Numa, ensuring no sympathy stirs among onlookers. The destination is the Campus Celeritas, the field of the wicked, just outside Rome's walls, where a chamber awaits, carved into the earth. As Roman Antiquities details its preparation with grim precision. Inside, a bed, a small lamp, a loaf of bread, a jug of water, and a cup of milk are placed. A cruel pretense of mercy, as Livy explains, to claim Rome wasn't killing her, but leaving her fate to the gods. The provisions, per ancient accounts, last mere days, while the air runs out sooner, ensuring a slow, suffocating death. The descent is the ultimate psychological torture. She must walk down the narrow staircase herself, as Dionysius records, her participation making her complicit in her own burial. Absolving Rome of direct murder. Once inside, the staircase is dismantled, the opening sealed with earth and stones, smoothed to erase any trace. As Pliny the Elder notes in Natural History, the absence of markers at burial sites. You imagine her in the chamber, the lamp's 6 hours of light, revealing the food she cannot outlast. Her breaths growing labored as oxygen fades. Livy recounts scratching sounds heard days later, fingernails clawing at stone. A detail that chills modern readers. The cultural context of Rome amplifies the horror. Purity was the state's foundation, as Fasti by Ovid ties the Vestal's chastity to Rome's survival. A parallel lies in the Greek cult of Artemis, where priestesses faced exile for impurity, per Herodotus, but lacked Rome's ritualized cruelty. The psychological impact, as modern trauma studies suggest, was devastating. Knowing any rumor could trigger this fate fostered paranoia, your every interaction with men scrutinized. A 3rd century BCE account from Fasti Capitolini tells of a Vestal accused after a guard lingered too long near her, her burial swift despite no evidence. The secrecy of the trial, as Beard observes, made justice a tool of power. The ritual's design ensured maximum terror, the wax-sealed mouth, the bridal gown, the silent crowd, all crafted to dehumanize while preserving sanctity. As Roman Antiquities notes the procession's theatricality, the emotional toll on the Vestal was unimaginable. Modern psychology likens such isolation to sensory deprivation, inducing panic and despair. The community, too, was scarred, forbidden to mourn or speak her name. As Livy records her erasure from records, her existence nullified. A comparison to Spartan executions per Xenophon shows public punishments meant to deter. Unlike Rome's hidden horrors, the burial's aftermath left the surviving Vestals in constant fear, their vigilance heightened, knowing a single whisper could entomb them. The stage is set for exploring how these punishments, layered with psychological warfare, ensured compliance, their truths buried in Rome's sacred annals, waiting to shock us with their calculated cruelty. The Temple of Vesta's sacred flame burns low in the dim light of 57 BCE. Its flicker a constant threat in your life as a young Vestal virgin, now a few years into your service at perhaps 13. The Roman Forum hums beyond the temple's marble walls, but inside, the air is thick with incense and dread. Every day you tend the flame with trembling hands, mixing sacred cakes and reciting prayers under the unyielding gaze of senior Vestals and priests, as Livy's Ab Urbe Candida describes the relentless scrutiny of your duties. The three sacred laws, perpetual virginity, absolute obedience, and guardianship of the flame, bind you tighter than the silk robes chafing your skin. The memory of Verberatio, the ritual beating for letting the flame die, haunts you, its pain etched in stories of sisters who survived it, their bodies bruised but unbroken, as Pliny the Elder's natural history hints at deaths masked as divine displeasure. You've seen a Vestal return from the dark chamber beneath the temple, her eyes hollow, her steps unsteady, as Aulus Gellius's Attic Nights recounts, such recoveries as deliberately slow to prolong suffering. The randomness of the flame's failure is what terrifies you most. A gust of wind, a faulty lamp, or even sabotage by a rival could extinguish it, yet the blame always falls on you. As Dionysius of Halicarnassus notes in Roman antiquities, the priest's eagerness to pin divine wrath on Vestals. You live in perpetual fear, your heart racing at every flicker, as modern psychological studies suggest such chronic stress breeds severe anxiety disorders, manifesting in the tremors and sleeplessness you've begun to notice. A 1st century BCE account from Fasti Capitolini tells of a Vestal punished for a flame doused by a storm. Her screams muffled in the temple's depths. The cultural context of Rome amplifies this terror. Livy ties the flame's continuity to the city's survival, making your vigilance a matter of state security. The psychological warfare is relentless. The pontifex Maximus inspects the flame at unpredictable intervals, his presence alone enough to make you flinch, as Plutarch's Life of Numa describes the priest's authority as absolute. You're interrogated in isolation if the flame wavers, confined without food or sleep. As Gellius details the windowless chambers used to extract confessions, the Verberatio is not just punishment, but a ritual to break your spirit. The consecrated rods designed to inflict internal damage without spilling sacred blood. As Celsus's De Medicina confirms injuries masked as illness. The recovery is its own torment. Temple physicians offer minimal care, their cold hands prodding your bruises, reminding you your pain is deserved. As Gellius notes the deliberate neglect to enforce compliance, you return to duties more submissive, your every move mechanical, as modern trauma studies liken this to learned helplessness, where victims internalize their powerlessness. A comparison to Spartan military discipline, per Xenophon's Constitution of the Lacedaemonians, reveals a less insidious cruelty. Spartan punishments were public, meant to shame, not cloaked in divine secrecy like Rome's. The randomness of blame deepens the horror. Historical accounts, such as those in Ascanius's commentaries, suggest priests sometimes extinguished the flame to target Vestals for political reasons, using divine pretext to settle grudges. As historian Mary Beard observes, the flame was a tool of control, not just devotion. A 73 BCE case in Fasti Capitolini describes a Vestal beaten after a rival's accusation, her innocence irrelevant. The psychological toll is visible. Older Vestals, as Pliny notes, lose hair from stress, their faces aging decades in years. You feel it too, checking the flame obsessively, your hands shaking as you add kindling, the scent of burning wood now synonymous with fear. The emotional impact extends to your sisters in the temple, each watching the others, knowing a misstep could implicate them all, as Dionysius records the collective dread during inspections. The recovery process after Verberatio is designed to maximize compliance. You're tended just enough to survive, your pain a lesson, as Gellius recounts physicians instructed to delay healing. A Vestal in 90 BCE, Perfasti, took months to walk unaided after a beating. Her spirit shattered. The temple's beauty, its marble floors and silk curtains, mocks your suffering, as every ritual, every prayer, becomes a performance to avoid the next blow. A parallel lies in the Egyptian priesthood of Amun, where, per Herodotus, priests faced corporal punishment but retained community ties, unlike the Vestal's isolation. The constant threat of incestum, the charge of unchastity, looms larger, its punishment, living burial, whispered among you, as Livy's account of Opimia's fate in 216 BCE chills your blood. You learn to avoid men's gazes, to shrink from touch, knowing a rumor could entomb you. The flame, your sacred charge, is both protector and jailer. Its light a fragile shield against the horrors awaiting any failure. The stage is set for exploring the aftermath of such a life, where even survival offers no escape, only a deeper entrapment in Rome's sacred machine, buried in texts that reveal a cruelty as calculated as it is shocking. 3 decades in the Temple of Vesta have passed, and in 27 BCE, at 38, you stand at the threshold of freedom, a former Vestal virgin released from your sacred vows. The Roman Forum hums beyond the marble columns, but its noise feels foreign, a world you no longer know. The sacred flame, which you guarded with trembling hands, its flicker, a constant threat of Verberatio or worse, is no longer your burden, as Livy's Ab Urba Condita ties its eternal burn to Rome's survival. Your youth, spent in the house of the Vestals under the watchful eyes of priests and senior sisters, has left you a shadow of the girl torn from her family at 10. The ceremony marking your release is grand. Priests in white togas honor your service. The imperial treasury promises a dowry, and you're granted permission to marry, as Digest of Justinian codifies for retiring Vestals. Yet this freedom is a cruel deception, as Suetonius's Lives of the Caesars hints at the hollow rewards awaiting you. The case of Claudia Quinta in 43 CE, recorded by Suetonius, reveals the stark reality. After 30 years of service, she received a substantial dowry and was introduced to suitors from noble families. But each engagement collapsed when religious authorities declared her marriage would pollute bloodlines and anger the gods. You face the same fate. Roman men, steeped in superstition, view you as untouchable, tainted by divine forces. As Pliny the Elder notes in Natural History, the belief that former Vestals were unfit for ordinary life. At 38, in an era where women married in their teens, you are past childbearing age. Your fertility sacrificed to Vesta, as Fasti by Ovid underscores the Vestal's role as a barren symbol of purity. The emotional toll is crushing. Modern PTSD research suggests prolonged isolation and trauma, like your years of surveillance and punishment, leave deep scars, manifesting in panic attacks and paranoia. You wake at night, heart racing, imagining the flame has gone out, as historical accounts describe Vestals haunted by such nightmares. The cultural context of Rome amplifies your isolation. Purity was the state's foundation, but your sacred status now marks you as an outsider. As historian Mary Beard observes, Vestals were revered, then discarded. A parallel lies in the Greek priestesses of Artemis, who per Herodotus could reintegrate after service, unlike Rome's rejection of its sacred women. The promised financial rewards often vanish. Suetonius recounts bureaucratic delays reducing pensions, leaving you with little to survive. You have no family, no skills for work, and no place in a society that fears you, as Attic Nights by Aulus Gellius describes former Vestals living in poverty. Claudia Quinta's fate mirrors yours. She lived alone outside Rome, shunned, her funeral attended only by hired mourners, her grave unmarked, as Suetonius notes. You, too, face a small house on the city's edge, its walls echoing the temple's silence, your days spent avoiding crowds who whisper of your divine curse. The psychological damage is profound. Modern trauma studies identify symptoms like those you exhibit. Compulsive behaviors, like checking locks obsessively, or an inability to be touched. As Fasti Capitolini records of Vestal who flinched at human contact after release. Some former Vestals, per Plutarch's Life of Numa, attempted suicide, unable to bear freedom's emptiness, while others became hermits, recreating the temple's isolation, as Dionysius of Halicarnassus describes one living like a ghost in her home. A 1st century CE account from Ascanius's commentaries tells of a Vestal who wandered Rome, preaching visions of Vesta, her sacred madness. Ignored by authorities, as Beard notes, their trauma was dismissed as divine eccentricity. The social barriers are as brutal as the biological ones. Roman men, per Suetonius, feared divine retribution for marrying you, believing your years of celibacy corrupted your womanhood. Your dowry, meant to secure a husband, is often withheld, as Digest records legal disputes over Vestal pensions. A comparison to Spartan women, who, per Xenophon, could remarry after widowhood with less stigma, highlights Rome's unique cruelty. You're neither wife nor citizen, your identity erased twice, first by Vesta, now by society. Some Vestals, per Gellius, were recruited back to train new girls, perpetuating the cycle of trauma. Their compliance, a survival mechanism. As modern psychology suggests, victims of institutional abuse may internalize their roles. You refuse, haunted by memories of Verberatio's pain and the terror of Incestum's burial. As Livy's account of Opimia's fate lingers in your mind, your life, sacrificed for Rome, earns you nothing but exile, social, economic, emotional. The temple's marble beauty, once your prison, now mocks your freedom, as every step in the forum reminds you of the flame you can't escape. The stage is set for reflecting on this system's cruelty, a machine of control that broke women under the guise of divine duty, its truths buried in Rome's sacred records, waiting to shock us with their calculated inhumanity. The Roman Forum's marble columns gleam under the sun of 27 BCE, but for you, a former Vestal virgin at 38, their beauty is a cruel reminder of 3 decades spent in a gilded cage. The sacred flame you guarded, its flicker once tied to Rome's survival, as Livy's Ob Orbe Condita proclaims, haunts your dreams, its glow inseparable from the terror of Verberatio beatings and the specter of living burial for Incestum. Released from the house of the Vestals, you wander the city's edges, shunned by a society that revered you as sacred, yet now fears you as cursed. As Suetonius's Lives of the Caesars records former Vestals like Claudia Quinta living in isolation. The system that shaped you was no mere religious order, but a machine of institutionalized trauma, designed to control women through fear cloaked in divine duty. As historian Mary Beard observes, the Vestal's sanctity was her shackle. Your life, stripped of family, fertility, and freedom, was a sacrifice to Rome's gods, yet the empire discarded you. Your promised dowry dwindled by bureaucracy, as Aulus Gellius Attic Nights notes legal disputes over Vestal pensions. The psychological scars, as modern PTSD research suggests, manifest in your sleepless nights, your compulsive checking of doors, your flinch at human touch, echoes of the temple's surveillance and punishments. A 1st century CE account from Fasti Capitolini describes a former Vestal wandering Rome, claiming visions of Vesta, her sacred madness ignored, a broken relic of the system's cruelty. The Vestal system was a centuries-long experiment in trauma-based control, taking girls at their most vulnerable, isolating them, and subjecting them to unpredictable cycles of punishment and reward. As modern psychological analysis of Livy's accounts suggests, the Verberatio beatings shattered physical safety, living burial crushed hope, and the false promise of freedom destroyed your spirit, revealing even faithful service led to abandonment. This wasn't incidental cruelty, but a deliberate design, as Plutarch's Life of Numa hints at the state's use of religion to enforce compliance. The cultural context of Rome normalized this horror. Citizens, per Dionysius of Halicarnassus, accepted Vestal punishments as necessary for divine favor, blind to the women's suffering. As Beard notes, piety veiled tyranny. A parallel lies in the Assyrian practice of sacred prostitution, where women served temples but retained some agency, per Herodotus, unlike the Vestal's total subjugation. The normalization extended to the erasure of victims. Names like Opimia, buried alive in 216 BCE, were struck from records, as Livy recounts, their existence nullified. Archaeological finds in the Roman Forum, cited in the Cambridge Ancient History, reveal Vestal artifacts, hairpins, ritual vessels, but no names, a testament to Rome's thorough erasure. The punishments escalated dehumanization. Verberatio broke your body, burial your hope, and freedom your identity, leaving you a ghost in your own city. A comparison to medieval convent systems, where nuns faced strict rules but could inherit or maintain family ties, per historian Judith Bennett, highlights Rome's unique brutality. The Vestal system's legacy ripples through history, its methods of control using purity, fear, and institutional power, echoing in later oppressions, as Bernard Lewis notes parallels in religious-based subjugation of women. The psychological manipulation, making you complicit in your own oppression, mirrors modern cult dynamics, as trauma studies suggest victims internalize their abuse to survive. Some former Vestals, per Gellius, trained new girls, perpetuating the cycle, their compliance a survival mechanism. A 2nd century BCE account from Ascanius's commentaries tells of a Vestal who, after release, taught rituals to novices, her trauma buried in duty. The women who endured this deserve remembrance, not as symbols of piety, but as human beings who suffered unimaginable cruelty. Their stories, buried in Rome's sacred texts, challenge the myth of imperial glory. As Beard urges, we must uncover the silenced to understand Rome's cost. Archaeological evidence from the Campus Sceleratus, where Vestals were buried alive, reveals smoothed earth with no markers, a silent testament to their erasure, per the Cambridge Ancient History. A 1st century CE Vestal, recorded in Fasti, hid her sister's child to preserve a family tie, her defiance a flicker of resistance against a system that owned her. The Vestal system reveals Rome's sophisticated cruelty, wrapping human suffering in divine justification, a pattern repeated in history's darkest chapters, from medieval witch hunts to modern authoritarian controls, as Lewis observes. These women lived, suffered, and died as real people, not footnotes to Rome's grandeur. Their courage, surviving decades of terror, demands we honor them by recognizing institutionalized cruelty wherever it persists. Their truths, buried in fragments of text and stone, whisper through time, urging us to seek other lost voices, those of priests, slaves, or rebels, whose stories wait to unsettle us with their resilience and loss. So what do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below so we can chat about it together. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow my channel to catch the latest videos.